This is where we're from, and this is where we belong from the beginning of time, since Yakwimet, forever.
This is the story of the life and death of a great river, Ancestral, the heart of our people. Since the beginning of time, the Ancestral River has flowed through this land. It has fed many peoples, and the Ho'et have fought wars defending the river and its resources. Today, we are fighting a new battle to bring the river back to life. It's a conflict where sides no longer matter, and if we pull together, everyone wins.
Okay? Okay?
In the past, millions of salmon returned to the mouth of the river each year, and according to custom, our families allowed many fish to pass by our traps and spears to spawn further up the river. We saw the fish as gifts from the Creator, and we wanted to ensure that our future generations would never go hungry. Today, the river is simply called Sarita, a name derived from the Spanish explorers who mapped this territory in the late 1700s. To our people, it was known as Ancestral, meaning white with the sperm of salmon. Less than 50 years ago, it was not unusual for so many salmon to travel up the mouth of the Sarita that the waters would boil white as they began to spawn.
The Sarita village was the main village of the Ho'et people, and this was their fishing area. Numakimis, the name today. And the very last part of enjoying catching salmon out here was around 1954, 55.
This is part of the Ancestral, the Sarita River. This used to be another spot that our people used to live and do fish. As you can see, there's nothing now, not even a fish. And we don't even see a dead carcass or anything to show that the fish have spawned. The only thing that we've seen is the few seagulls that were flying around earlier. Maybe we might find one fish somewhere. It used to be really wide here. It used to be a big river. And, you know, it's just a lot of changes from a long time ago.
When Mac Blow started cutting the trees off of the mountain, the Ohites would tell them to leave a little strip along the river here, Sarita River, so that all what's coming down, the silt and what's coming down off of the mountains wouldn't get into the river and spoil the river for the fish. But the logging companies did whatever they wanted to do.
We've always known that logging, which began here in the 1930s, was largely responsible for killing off the salmon in our river. In fact, studies conducted by forest management companies have pointed to clear-cut logging as the major culprit in altering the flow of water in the Sarita.
1987, the Ojai people contacted us to help them with what is called a cutoff claim. There were reserves that during about the turn of the century or early 1900s in what was called the McKenna-McBride Commission that were reduced in size or cut off. Sometimes whole reserves were removed. And the federal government eventually agreed to settle these claims with indigenous nations. Involved in the settlement of those claims was the need to assess the losses to the indigenous people. What I saw in the Sarita River is something very typical of what you can find in clear-cut based logging systems around the world. If you clear-cut one patch of trees in the watershed and continuously crop it for timber, what you do is get rid of or lose important composition and structure or parts of the forest that are necessary to keep a fully functioning ecosystem. And the most obvious parts that you lose are the large old trees, the large standing dead trees or snags, and the fallen trees on the forest floor. And during logging, many of those large old trees that serve as Mother Nature's water storage and filtration system got smashed apart. The problem in the Sarita River drainage basin is that it was virtually all clear-cut. And when you clear-cut that forest, you remove the forest's ability to absorb and hold water, both in the crowns of the trees and in the decaying wood that's found in the forest. So instead of being held in that forest and slowly released into the system, when it rains, that water now pours off the hillside, carrying with it everything from boulders the size of this room to fine particles like sand, silt, and clay. And if you're a fish, you can't swim there anymore, so the whole system becomes degraded.
This was the greenest place in my whole lifetime that I lived at. And there was trees, there was no logging at that point. There was a patch here and a patch there, but there was no proper caretaking after the logging that they got. So the river changed, the food supply changed, the structure of the river itself, the physical structure of the river itself has changed drastically.
The gravel we see here did not move down from further up the river. It came down from the mountainsides, like where the roads were built. That's where this gravel and boulders are washed down from. And plenty of it, and then it's building up in the riverbeds, and it's really changed. It really saddens my feeling to see the way it is today.
This is where we caught our fish. This is how we lived. And the sad part for me is we can't live here anymore. We used to be able to live here. You know, our garden was this river. And now we got no more garden. Can't get our fish anymore. But there used to be smokehouses all along the banks. People would have smokehouses up and down this river. And now we don't even have one.
My late husband used to go way up in a canoe, a place called Itsnit. He took 2 hours before the road. He used to go fishing way up and get steelheads. And I was ready to start cutting. There was so much fish in those days. It's just a sad thing that it's gone now. We don't see a thing going up the river there. I go through there a lot, going to Port Alberni, looking down, you know, see if there's a splash of fish. Not a thing.
What had been started in the 1930s with Trans-Pacific Company, a Japanese-owned firm, was picked up after the war by BC timber giant Bloedel, Stewart and Welsh. The declared purpose of the Sarita timber harvest was the culling of trees hit by a beetle infestation, or hemlock looper. One of the largest logging camps in North America was created at Sarita in the late 1940s to quickly and expediently harvest what was perceived as wasteful timber in a dying forest.
You talk about insects like the hemlock looper. There's this interesting word that foresters have developed for insects and fungi in the forest. The forestry profession and the logging profession calls them pests, quote unquote. Well, that labels them in a way that gives the impression that they're a big problem as opposed to a natural part of the forest. So pests have always been a euphemism for logging. And the hemlock looper in the Sarita River likely did several things that were very advantageous to logging companies. First of all, it made them able to circumvent whatever regulations existed during that time to control logging and any damage that logging might do. So virtually all the rules kind of got put aside because there was this emergency, this pest attack. And the other thing that happens with pest attacks or salvaging losses, quote unquote, from a forest is that you pay minimum stumpage. So the price that they would have paid for that wood, which is probably some of the highest quality wood in the world that ever grew in this province, would have been maybe 25 cents a meter or less, as opposed to many times that if the wood had not been affected by insects.
Oh, we lived there right on the road. We lived there right close to, we had our houses in the front and they made a road right on the reserve. They even chased us out.
Who chased you out?
Bloedels. Out of our own reserve. We were in the way. We lived with Chief Louis and my late husband. The Bloedels came, they're shoving gravel around the house. We had to get out of there. I wish I could talk to them today and tell them what they did to us. You know how much they gave us to get out of there? Wreck the house? $1,000. And $100 for the smokers we had. I think we were the only ones that was in the way, so they got us out of there.
Logging is only part of the story at Sarita. As early as 1913, our hereditary chief, Chief Louis, expressed his concern to government officials about overfishing in Sarita Bay.
When we fish from our canoes and small boats. We use hand lines or troll. The white man who fish for the canneries use the seine, but we do not. The cannery men bring their seine boats right into the mouth of the Sarita. The fish can't get through to spawn, and even fewer fish come up for us to eat.
Sailboats are like a city out on the ocean. There'd be lots of sailboats there, big ones, little ones, seining for all the fish that was there, right in the Makamis Bay.
Don't really remember exactly what year we stopped seeing them out here, but it was getting less and less each year. From when we were real small, you could see them all over the bay, and then you'd be lucky to see maybe 2-3 boats, trollers, and when the canoes stopped, they started getting outboard motors, and it was getting less and less all the time till they closed the boundaries here, and they're not fishing around here anymore.
Just want to welcome you all here today on behalf of our treaty committee and also the our ancestors that have gone before us that started all of this. We've got a lot of work to do, and the Hu'ayat fishermen are a big part of that. You know, you people are the survivors. You survived probably the hardest time in history that our people had. Part of that was the residential school system and a lot of other things, and you people survived that. So we really need you to come and help us. We Ho'ayats have been people of the sea for thousands of years. Halibut, salmon, sea bass, and all variety of fish were caught by our people over the centuries. Known as the killer whale people, the Ho'ayats took to the seas in great whaling canoes, where we would capture gray whales and great 50-foot humpbacks.
This was a fishing village, eh? Chuppas. Our people have been here for ages. hundreds, thousands of years this village site was always used. But it became a modern village residence for our people where they lived here from probably in March until the end of September. And then at nighttime, this looked like a city. There would be so many boats would be anchored out in here. It would look like a little city when all the boats would have their anchor lights on, and it's just a beautiful place to see. And when you look at it today, you just wouldn't believe that it was a big fishing village. So I guess that kind of explains what's happened with the fishing industry. However the fishing industry went, that's what happened to our people too. And because there's no more fish for us to fish, we no longer have any reason to be living out here.
With centuries of experience in fishing, the Ho'ayats of the early 19th century had to adapt to a new economy by becoming skilled boat builders and commercial fishermen.
My great-grandfather and my grandfather, they're boat builders and they're fishermen, and my father and all my uncles were into fishing. It pains me in my heart, you know, because I can recall when I was growing up and they used to talk, you know, a lot about it, you know. They even remembered when they were young boys, when they lived at Sarita, when they'd be hand trolling out in the river there, and they'd be talking about how it was just bubbling away, you know, there's fish everywhere and you didn't have to worry about, you know, going home, you know, without dinner for that night and so on.
Everybody in Hu'ayat at some point in their life survived off the fishing. And first we've done it by food source. And then when commercial fishing became the norm on the West Coast, and in particular the Barkley Sound, our people were the leaders into the commercial industry. You know, I remember Alec Williams saying that non-native fishermen would follow him out so they'd know where the fish banks are, eh? Because it was our people that knew them. Like, this is when we're talking about when there was no electronic equipment. There was no compass. All you had was your motor and your steering wheel, and you know, and you had to know all the landmarks offshore. So that's how we were able to introduce non-natives into offshore fishery. It was our people that taught them.
So you head south? Today, as we look at the history of our region in the Sarita River, we must depend on the knowledge of these fishermen to recall the levels of fish stocks as well as the location of traditional Ho'ayat fishing grounds.
Look, I went back. Oh, I used to have a lot of fun at Sarita River when I was about 9 years old, 8 years old. Used to be all kinds of fish. There used to be lots, real lots. I don't know what, we quit fishing at Sarita. There's no more fish.
And when you go into Sarita, you know, from Maccamis Bay to Sarita camp, there was a store there, you know. And when you're going across, boy, your canoe is moving. There's so much fish there where, you know, just hitting the canoe, running around. And your oars, you know, you're hitting them. Fish.
You're hitting them while you're rowing across.
Oh, yeah. So no fish now.
In the outside village? Used to be a good spot in here somewhere, southwest of Carmana. Good for everything, spring, sockeye, coho.
There's a part of my life I'd never forget, growing up in Cerrito Reserve. When I was really young, how it used to be a thrill to look out our back window and look on the flats there and see the different animals there. In one corner there'd be deer, and next to that there'd be some bears walking around in the flats there. And across the river there'd be some wolves. Abundant of them, there's all kinds of them. To me at that time, it used to be like being in a zoo, a natural zoo. And the fish life was something else too. At night you could hear the fish out in the bay. And the seal would stampede them and it sounded like thundering. There were so many of them, it'd be really loud. That was something else there.
At one time, there were many, many people that lived here, many families that lived here, all throughout this area here, Numuckamus Bay, even over to where our land is in Chichasias. There was people living here. And I would guess to say that there was probably 300 people that used to live here and used to live off of the food within this area and live off the river and the many different types of fish that would go up this river. And I wonder, what happened? What happened? You know, what happened to the village here? What happened to Cookswees over there? What happened to our other summer village, Chuppis, down there? And I think it stems back, right back to the food source, the fish. The fish is gone. The fish is gone. There is no more fish.
The resources in the west coast of Vancouver Island as we see them today are just remnants of what they were in the past, the pre-coming of European traders and explorers. And you can look at the history from the very start of the sea otter industry, the fur trade that came the last decades of the 18th century and the early decades of the 19th century. There's thousands and thousands, and hundreds of thousands of sea otters on the west coast of Vancouver Island, hunted to extinction. You look at the history of the pelagic sealing or the whaling, commercial whaling. Look at the history of the fishing industry, the salmon industry, or the halibut industry, or the herring industry. It's been hunting to extinction or near extinction of just about every species that is around out there. You look at the logging practices out there in the west coast of Vancouver Island, you can see these denuded landscapes. Well, that's just a continuation of 200 years of industrial harvesting in that area. It's just a different species, a land-based species versus the water-based species that you had before. One doesn't realize the devastation on the west coast of Vancouver Island and of the resource base there until you talk to some of the elders. There's one history that was given to me by one of the Ojai chiefs who talks about the Salmon River at the head of Grappler Inlet. You go there now and you see there's this little creek ravaged by floodwaters and that sort of thing, logged in the area, but he'll tell a story about the chief there who used to take the salmon out of this creek, 300 cohos, all 25, 30 pound cohos. He used to take half of that run, 150 fish, and let 150 go by. Year after year, these salmon always return. You go there today, there is no salmon run. Why? Perhaps logging practices, commercial fishing over the last 100 years, seining the mouths of the small streams. All you have to do is set one seine, 300 fish caught. That's the end of that salmon run.
This used to be a real nice, beautiful riverbed. Because I used to be down here quite often, and it was very beautiful. No big boulders like here right now. Because the way it's ruined, because of the log jams and uprooted trees from the flash floods. I bet you this was about that deep before Christmas. There was no sandbars like that, what we see up there. It was all even like across there, what we see there. That's how it used to be, all the way up, both sides of the riverbed. The way the gravel is, it's all from the flooding because of the clear cut.
When you see the dry creek beds in the Cerrito River watershed that once were clear, clean tributaries that flowed year-round, many of us scratch our heads and say, what happened to the water? Well, what happened to the water is one of two things. Either logging roads and or other logging activities that compacted soil took water that once flowed downhill into those little streams or brooks and moved it to another location, so there was no longer any water source there for that stream. Or, as the hillsides were clear-cut, material, rocks, gravels, silt, sand, washed into that small stream bed, filled it up, and so the water's still there, but you just can't see it. It's flowing either several inches or in some cases several feet below the surface.
Today, we Ho'ayats are determined to see a restoration of the Cerrito watershed, even though this process may take many generations. We have also realized that if this dream is ever to become a reality, we have to go beyond our own community.
The Ho'ayat Nation decided that it was time to invite the community of Bamfield and the people that we've been sharing this land with for many years. We thought it was time to invite them to share a meal with us, to have a feast together, which was how we did things. We feasted together, we shared a meal together, and that was the way things were done because it was a happy time. Everyone's full, they're feeling good. It's the way that we were taught from our elders, was to provide people with something to eat and to share those times together. The time had come to show the Bamfield community and the people who live in our territory who we are and what we represent and how we think, because we think differently.
These are the chiefs of Ho'ayat tribe. The head chief, second chief, third chief, fourth chief, and fifth chief. We are presenting with today.
We have a new journey, a new direction. As Ho'ayat people that we have got to go. We're going to share with you what we have in common as a small community, where we're going to go forward and share what we have in common as a common goal. As each and every one of these people in Bamfield, some of these people that have been here for many, many years, one of them is this gentleman here, Rold, and Nan Ostrom. They've been here many years. They've seen the changes. And we will be showing you who we are as Ho'ayat people are. We want to share with you some of our culture. Some of you people have not been around long enough to even witness some of the things that we have in common with you people. True? Tako, tako.
We weren't quite expecting as many people that showed up, so in that respect it was unbelievable. The people just kept coming in. And it was nice to see because I think they were truly interested in finding out who are these people that we've been living with for so many years. Who are they? There was some special things that happened last night. For the first time in a long time, we had some eagle down, which is very, very sacred to our people. The eagle down is used for the cleansing and the preparation before the festivities take place. And for me, that was a very special time because when the dancers came out with the eagle down, and they were singing the Tsika, the prayer song, and they were spreading that eagle down around. And I was in the drum circles singing and drumming and watching what was going on. And I could see this eagle down floating in the air, and it was going out and over all of the community members that were there, all of the Bamfield community members that were there. And for someone, I guess because I feel strongly about our culture and our traditions, to see that, it really meant something to me. It meant that it meant that we were cleansing not only the hall, but we were cleansing the people within that hall. I hope that by doing this, it'll help us to start our new relationship, that we're going to be able to start off in the right direction together, because that's what we want.
Many years ago, when the forests around that river were so thick, that habitat was so plentiful, that any time that any of our people wanted to go trapping, they could go trapping. If they wanted to go hunting, they could go hunting. And if they wanted to fish, they could fish. And the way that river is today, we can't do that anymore. That is where our people used to live. Except we were generous enough to share it with the new settlers that came. And we want to tell you today that we still want to share this land. Because the one that put it here didn't put it so that you can own it or I can own it. The one that made this, and we know who we're all talking about. We call him Nas. The next hot wish, the one that made the land, the one that made the forest, the one that made the animals. And I can tell you it was no government in Ottawa that made it.
200 years ago, the main winter village of Numukamis supported several thousand people. The Sarita River was one of the richest in the territory, and its fish were much sought after by other tribes.
See, the old village site is just up ahead here, the one they call Beacon. And there was village sites on all these three beaches here. There must have been lots of people back then. This is the village site of where our people were wiped out by war, or almost completely wiped out by war. That's why they call this place, in English, they call it Execution Rock. So it has that history to it too, where this is where the Clallam Indians from the United States attacked our people.
There's a war between the Ojibwe and the Clallam people. The Clallam and their allies from what is now the American side came up into the Barkley Sound area, attacked the Ojibwe peoples, the Keenot peoples, at the village site of Keean.
The reason they attacked us is that we had to protect our fishing waters off waterfall.
They were attacked and everyone was killed of the tribe, except for these 4 young people, 2 men and 2 young women.
And the only reason that we got caught off guard was that they attacked at nighttime. And that was one of the sorry things. I guess they paddled in quite quietly and we couldn't hear them.
And they paddled, escaped up into the mouth of the Sarita River, and then up the Sarita River with the established villages. And they and a few other survivors that sort of gathered in that area lived for a number of years up the Sarita River.
They moved up here, this place called Sarita Lake, Numakamis Auk. And in that area, that's where they settled for many years.
While they were back there, they were multiplying until they got to be a big tribe again. And while we were away, Tisha people, Hachad people, Huachakwasit people, and Nitinat people started to settle in our land. So this song you're going to see now is our paddle song, coming back down the river to reclaim our land, and that's literally what it means. And we think of our Ho'ayat paddle song. It is, in a sense, a victory song. You're coming back down the river to reclaim what's yours. What is rightfully yours, you're going to go and get it back. And today we're in that same process. Today we're saying to non-native people, look, we want to restore these rivers. We want to replenish them, because those are our rivers. We want to put fish back in there. It's going to benefit you. It's going to benefit me. So this is a victory for us, because we're the ones that are singing the tune, let's restore that river. And we don't hear other non-native people standing beside us saying, okay, Ho'ayat people, we're beside you. We want to be in that same canoe with you. We're literally going out in the community, asking people to be part of this process. So we know we're the leaders in that. So in a sense, this is a victory song for us, because we're saying we know what needs to be done and we're willing to do it. Oh, deep, yes. So I always knew about this place, because I lived with Chief Louis. Every Christmas break, Easter break, summer break, I'd go stay with him. Back in the 1700s, the families used to live in one house. There would maybe be 30, 40, maybe as high as 50 people in one longhouse. So every one of these beaches, you probably got, 6 or more longhouses per beach. Okay, what we have here is the old village site of the Kiikanat people, who were the main tribal group of Hōʻaiat. This is the old village site that my grandfather, Chief Louis, used to take us to when we were small. I can remember first coming here at 11, 12 years old. I always knew this place existed. There was no big revelation when some archaeologists found it. My grandfather told me the stories that went with this place. I know the names of the chiefs that used to live here. He told me all the names. So those are the things that I know.
You go out with an Ojai elder to some of these old villages, they will talk to you about the history of that place, as if it is today. And they say that when you're out in that landscape, you're walking on the bones of your ancestors. When you go back probably at the time of contact and looking at the history of that area of the Ojai period, villages of independent peoples closely related by marriage, economic alliances were set up. Their territories were extremely small. These villages had a population of maybe 3, 4, 5, some of the big ones maybe up to 600 peoples. We tend to view this landscape again as you go out behind these villages and look at this wonderful green forest and say, wow, isn't this wonderful? This area hasn't been logged yet. Well, it hasn't been logged from the sense of clear cutting, their modern forest technology, but it's been logged for thousands of years by the peoples that lived there, you know, whose traditional homelands those are. And the logging, which is very different and very selective. And if you had an opportunity to sort of go in a sort of helicopter today and fly over those villages 200 years ago, you would have seen there'd been every half mile or so, there'd been village and another village and another village. A tremendous number of villages in there. Just the sense of occupancy in that area. And it was a full landscape. It was a fully occupied, fully owned, fully known, and fully exploited landscape.
We had like probably around 15 homes here at one time. And due to relocation, different fishing styles, change of fish populations and livelihood jobs, we moved away. But it's always in the back of my mind that I would be considering moving home. In my early days, the fish life in Sarita was ample, actually, because right out back here, we used to spear fish. I don't know if we have any spears left, but we used to be able to just walk down and spear fish, and you could almost walk on top of them at that time, which wasn't too long ago. And for that today, for me to come during the seasons, you don't see that anymore. When the tribe got together to get food fish, we'd probably have about 8, 10 people getting fish, but it was for everybody. It wasn't just for one specific family or one specific need. And you don't see that today. This was a deep river at one time. We used to have to actually go across on boat, but now we could walk across at low tide. Again, like I say, my dad used to bring his boat right close to within a quarter mile from the house, or park right in front of the house in high tides. But now we can't do that because of the change of structure, because of the change of the environment.
Not only did the Sarita provide us with food and nourishment, but many places like the island of Chochinkas on the mouth of the river were sacred to our people. On this island, Ho'et elders would oversee a young person going through 4 days of initiation into a secret wolf society. The Tlukwana ceremony involved 4 days of prayer, fasting, and song. Afterwards, the young man would be brought back into our community as a member of this sacred society.
We have in our traditions a very sacred ceremony. It's called Tlukwana, and it used to be held on Chochinkas. And it's something that hasn't been held there for, I can't even say how long. It's been decades anyway. It has been a long time.
When you were children, you didn't know that there was somebody in there, that you really thought they were wolves. But after a while, we learned that they were some people that were dressed as wolves. They were scary, I'm telling you.
Going through that, it definitely changed your life, and children and young adults would be taken away and they'd be initiated into that ceremony. And when it was all over and done with, that's when the parents and the uncles and aunts and all that would be dancing around Numukamus, Sarita Bay, and be singing that song, praising that, they got their children back. Sarita can no longer, support a community. There's just a couple of families there now, and our main industry and our main livelihood was taken away, with that river being, the stocks being depleted. I can remember when I was about 4 or 5 years old, me and my mother was having a conversation, and I told her that when I grew up, I was going to be a fisherman, because I wanted to name my boat after my late sister, as she died when she was a baby. And that was something I always wanted to do for my mother and for myself, and I never had that chance. I've never really been out fishing before, just a couple of times, but it wasn't like how it was in different times where I would have been learning it all through my life, and it would have been right there.
You see this island here? That's where your grandpa used to go and spend some time, where he would go to fast and pray. My dad, he was a fisherman for a while. He used to go out with my grandpa as a very young man, and then eventually he would take over the boat and my grandpa would stay home and they would take turns. And eventually he ended up becoming a logger. I think because the fish were going away. The fish were leaving us. The rivers and the streams and the spawning grounds were being ruined. He would take off and she wouldn't know where he got to. And it's affected us. It's affected us even more than you can imagine. It slowly, slowly moved our people away from their traditional place here in the Mukamis. The ruining of this river and this estuary and this New Mukamis Bay has not only ruined our way of life, it has also touched every living creature within this habitat here, within this area.
It's not only this area, it's an international issue that we need to look at, really. We all need to look at how do we preserve this earth. And today's society is a very destructive society. And we're losing the wildlife. I mean, we're moving, we moved a deer out of the area, we moved a bear out of the area, we moved a fish out of the area. We not only moved them out, but we destroyed a large population of them. We wasted a large population, and we could say that. So I don't believe we'll ever see Sarita the way I've seen it in the past. That's a sad part of my life that I look at all times.
Non-native people have a perception of native people. They think that we're drunks, we're lazy, we're welfare bums, and all this other negative perception. What they don't realize is that we're concerned about people. We're willing to share our land with people. We're people that want to restore the land to its original state, or the environment. The land has to be restored to its original state. We care more about the land and the sea than they would ever realize. And that's why we have such an interest in this process that we're going to. And that's the challenge I put to non-native people. Get in our canoe that says we're going to beat or exceed existing environmental standards. Come on, get in our canoe.
It doesn't matter what nationality you are, let's work together. Rebuild the rivers the logging companies destroyed. Regardless where you're from, let's learn to work together to rebuild the salmon spawning riverbeds. Let's rebuild it. Let's learn to do that. I'm expecting my sons to realize the chance they have of working together with other nationalities to rebuild a river like this. Let's rebuild it, let's restock it with spring salmon, cohos, chums. Let's get this fingerlings from hatcheries and place them in here and see what will be start coming back. But first of all, what we need to do is rebuild the riverbanks with trees. I would like to see it start with alder.
We can plant some alder in disturbed clear-cut sites that puts nitrogen back into the soil and will help bring along the conifers and their growth through hundreds of years. We can take poorly constructed stream crossings and take out bridges or improve bridges so they don't affect stream banks and the flow of the river. But those are all really very small, trivial things if we really want to restore their functioning. The question for the future of people and forests has a lot to do with whether we can get our heads around the need to focus on what to leave, not on what to take. And when you're talking about a landscape like the Sarita River, you've got to protect about 80% of it. And have only probably in the neighborhood of 20% of it that's available for active timber cutting. You've also got to look at timber cutting systems that leave in round figures 30% of the large old trees well distributed across the site to grow old and die, to provide the canopy that catches water, to replace the snags and the fallen trees, to keep that forest functioning. Lots of people now recognize the need for that. The science of that is well documented. The intuitive understanding of that has been with indigenous people and some non-indigenous people for thousands, if not hundreds of years. Unfortunately, forestry schools, logging companies are sort of being drugged kicking and screaming into that ecological reality. And I think that the progressive timber companies are now interested in that. They realize that if for no other reason, their own survival as financial institutions and their access to public forests to be able to cut trees there may depend upon adapting to more ecosystem-based approaches.
I do have a very strong hope, and let's make it a promise. This Sarita River, Namaquamis River, will be repaired. Let's all nationalities get together and work together. Let's rebuild the salmon spawning riverbeds.